Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Dyslexia Success Stories. I'm Dr. Tim Conway. By professional training, I have a PhD in clinical psychology, neuropsychology, and that's how the brain functions, how the brain builds skills, how to measure those skills. And I'm uniquely also trained in neurorehabilitation, which means what happens when the brain gets damaged. Can you rebuild those skills? Also peer review published in developmental disorders like dyslexia, where it's not damage, it's just an inefficiency in how the brain is processing information. And despite common myths that a brain with dyslexia diagnoses can't change and actually build new strengths, we know we have peer-reviewed evidence that the brain can change, it can make new wiring, it can build new skills. So with all of my background, but I'm also a dad of two kids with dyslexia, and besides doing all the research, the point was, how does it get to the moms and dads of the world when it's not in the school systems? Because one caveat that everyone needs to understand is your physician is required to practice evidence-based medicine. That means it's been tested, it's been proven, it's highly effective. Your school system is not required to meet that standard. So you actually have the most chance for misinformation, the most chance for ineffective services in the school system of any other profession in the world, because it's not required to have any proof that what's being done there actually works. So today we're going to talk to a professional, Michelle Yepez. Michelle is going to tell us about her journey, which is unfortunately an all too common journey. It's the journey that I would have been on if my kids hadn't actually gotten evidence-based services around ages 7 to 9. It's why I left my academia research profile and worked now on educational delivery of services through ed tech platforms like nowprograms.com, through highly intensive, highly trained medical team clinics called the Morris Center that have been around for 39 years, empowering kids with stronger skills, teenagers with stronger skills, adults with stronger skills, 2, 3, 4-year-olds with stronger skills, and even older adults in their 70s with stronger skills. The brain has a lifelong potential to rewire, strengthen, and improve. So it's my pleasure to welcome Michelle Yepez to our studio today. Michelle, happy to have you here. How's the weather in Missouri? And we're going to unmute you. Sorry, Michelle. Go right ahead. Now you're unmuted.
Oh, okay. Very good. Yeah, it's pretty cold. We had snow a couple days ago and it's not all melted off yet. So, yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say it, but we're having a cold day in Florida today. It's a high of only 66, but I know that's all relative.
Very good. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. And I know we're going to tell the story of your son, Nate. And it's a very telling story because one key element that I want to jump to right away was Nate was 16 years old and still was not a functional reader. Is that accurate? Would you describe Nate as being almost functionally illiterate at age 16?
Oh, absolutely. And this was after he had already done years and years of different types of interventions. So, starting in second grade and first grade, when I noticed he was having troubles, we started with reading aids and IEP. And, then I tried to teach him Barton reading and spelling because, I'm an educated person. I'm not an educator, but okay, they say I should be able to tutor him. So I tried. I had school try. I had a dyslexia center try to teach him, again, using Barton reading and spelling. We did mind play, the whole gamut of different things. School tried again with Spire, and, just no real improvement. By the time he got to high school, again, they were trying to teach him how to write, and as well as we were doing outside intervention, but he had to have everything read and scribed for him to keep up with, the normal pathway, because from the get-go, he's like, I'm a smart kid. I want to go to college. I want to be, at that time I want to be an engineer. So we always held that out there.
Yeah.
That this is something that you can do. I can tell you're intelligent. Yeah, you're struggling to read because of all this. We've had, they pushed accommodations on him and a computer by the time he was in fourth grade. Well, we don't need to teach you how to write, handwrite. We'll just give you a computer. That will be fine. All of those things.
So let's pause 1 second. Let me throw a slide up. And this is a slide of his academic skills. despite all these interventions, and really not much had changed. So talk to us a little bit about this data. And what I really want to point out to the viewers first is that very first bar that says GAI basically is an estimate of his IQ. Now, one caveat for any parent dealing with learning disabilities, and I'm a neuropsychologist, IQ testing is never going to be completely reliable for a child who has well-documented learning difficulties. Whether it's a diagnosis of dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, whether it's ADHD, whether it's a language disorder, all of those diagnosed developmental difficulties will influence the accuracy of the IQ test, which means it's not going to give us the full picture of what the child's true potential is. And potential doesn't mean what it can be in life. Potential means how high could his reading skills actually be? How high could his spelling skills actually be? What's a reasonable expectation for his reading comprehension, his listening comprehension? That's really the only utility of an accurate IQ measure. With that in mind, Nate's IQ in that first bar is almost solidly at the 50th percentile. That means this is a boy with average IQ. But Michelle, talk to us about these other scores that you see on here, because pretty much all of these scores are below the 15th percentile.
Yeah. And they were really true showing of what his function was, because he could read graphic novels to a certain extent. He had gone from being a complete non-reader to being able to read the little bubbles, of a graphic novel, and he gleaned most of the information from what was happening in the pictures, that type of things. But when he was a freshman and sophomore in high school, even listening to speech to text on his, for class work and that type of thing wasn't really effective for him. It was better to have somebody actually read it to him.
Right.
Anything that had to be written by someone else. Either he had a teacher at school that would do that for him, or we would do it as parents. My husband and I, so a lot of things had to be retaught at home, again, to make sure that he got the content that was being presented. He was perfectly fine with understanding the content, but
Right.
he was fully dependent on somebody else to provide it to him individually.
And let's be clear too, this is not a child who has not been exposed to reading. He has been exposed to reading. He has been exposed to a good verbal family environment. Just listening to you talk, you can talk very fluently, very easily. There's lots of ideas coming from his mother. And his father, like you having a graduate degree, his father also had a, doctoral level degree as a dental
Orthodontist.
orthodontist. I'll get the right word there. Yeah. So he has two highly educated parents and an educated family, folks with an average and above average IQs. He's getting all the exposure. And yet here we have a boy, and in the middle, we have all the reading and spelling skills, and they're all below the 15th percentile. On the left, we have the IQ, and he's got plenty strong IQ. But here's why I said earlier, the IQ is probably not accurate, because look over on the right side. We have 3 bars measuring his math skills. His mathematics is a 110. That's like the 60th percentile. His numerical reasoning compared to same age peers, his understanding of numeration and numerical operations of like add, subtract, multiply, divide that are not word problems, at about a 115. That's like the 85th percentile. So you can't have an IQ at the 15th percentile and have math skills at the 70th or 80th percentile or 85th percentile. That's one indicator that there is a learning difficulty going on here. And somehow the brain's not processing and not learning from the experiences well enough to build the phonological skills, the reading skills, and the spelling skills. So tell us about the mathematics, because this is probably going to boggle some viewers' minds. How can a kid who can't read and spell really excel at math?
Oh yeah, I mean, and this really shows kind of the whole thing in a nutshell. He was taking physics in high school.
Wow.
And, he had to have everything, if it was word problems and that type of thing, to make sure that it was correct, he had to have it read for him. He had no problem doing that. He's since gone on and done, calculus class in community college. So, absolutely no issues with comprehending when the pathways are proper.
Right. And so let me talk a little bit more from a neuropsychology, neurorehabilitation background. So I spent 10 years rebuilding brain processing and functional skills in adults who had a stroke. The stroke typically damages the left side. Typically, when you get left-sided damage, it's going to affect speaking skills, reading skills, spelling skills, comprehension skills. But typically, it may not actually affect math skills. We know that most of the brain, for whatever reason, is wiring math skills more on the right side than the left side. We think it's partly due to a lot of math is kind of imagery. You can visualize, geometry. You can visualize area and volume. There's a lot of mental imagery going on with conceptualizing math. And in fact, if you ever read the autobiography of Albert Einstein, he famously talks about how he would see concepts first and then go figure out the mathematical formula second. And so he's using imagery to guide the direction to mathematical formulas. So we know that you can have fully functional right hemisphere systems, which can be mathematics, and not meet the diagnosis for a math learning disability that we call dyscalculia, which means you have trouble with the calculations or the operations of math or the numbers of math. But you could have dyslexia. And we believe brain-wise that dyslexia is more of a left hemisphere, and it's not a difference in brain function. It's a difference in how the brain's actually processing language information. Is it processing it well, easily, and efficiently? You're going to have a good reader, good speller, good writer. If it's struggling to process that information, then it means the brain has not had the right instructional practice to build the wiring strengths that it needs in the right developmental hierarchy. And so that's what, Michelle, you're being faced with multiple programs. The school is throwing multiple programs at you. But let's clarify one thing, because this is a really tough spot for a parent. How do you decide if what the school is choosing is going to work or not work? And you're a healthcare professional. So in your profession, how do you know if a medication is going to work or not? Because you're trained as a pharmacist. How do you know if the pharmacy meds work or they don't work?
So, we have studies, randomized controlled studies, and, and then peer review checking of that. And then also, once those things are out, then you have, another layer of people that are looking for, you know, was the study done correctly? So all of those things are in place. And then we have National Institutes of Health that, again, further review to make sure that, the right programs are out there, or, right medication is given for the right reasons, from that kind of hierarchical way. So, yeah.
And from your perspective, and from what you've already said, it's clear to you that you have an intelligent boy. There's
Yeah.
not a lack of intelligence, which is true of anybody who has a learning disability like dyslexia. It's not IQ related. You know he's competent, really competent in mathematics and other skills, but somehow it is not processing his brain is not processing the information properly in the left side of the brain. So how do we actually build those skills and make it stronger? So
Right.
how did you understand what the school was choosing to do?
So, as far as what the school was choosing, they were giving what they wanted to. In the IEP, for instance, they didn't want to have to deal with basic reading skills. So they would target, fluency. Oh, he can't read well enough. So when he was in seventh grade, I knew he was having troubles, and I'd already put him through, a couple of years of Barton by this time. And I knew the spelling was a huge issue, that he just wasn't connecting that sound to a letter. But the person who was a certified academic language therapist, and had been doing Take Flight, said, "Oh no, we aren't going to do anything to help with spelling. We're just going to use part of Take Flight that's for fluency and just have him read second grade material over and over and over, and then magically he will learn to read." That did not work so well for him, because looking at this graph, and I knew it wouldn't at that time either. Um, and then I unfortunately had to file due process after that, because I knew what they were offering was not going to help him.
And
Uh,
clarify for families who don't know this legal aspect yet. What does it mean to file due process? You're like suing the school district because they've not taught your child how to read?
Yeah, so I had a bunch of data. Again, I'm a pharmacist, so I was looking at the data and asking for different testing. to be done. So when he was in seventh grade, I had them testing for writing disability. I already had a reading disability. But again, they didn't say anything about basic reading skills. Writing, I knew was worse than reading, so I had them test that. They had nothing to offer him. They had nothing that they could do. So I said, thinking from my background as a pharmacist and have working that, if somebody says, okay, I'm willing to talk to a lawyer and we're going to have a discussion via a lawyer
Yeah.
about what's happening, that you should do something to fix that. And unfortunately, that didn't end up happening. Went through the whole process, was in front of a administrative hearing judge. He found that Nate was denied a free and appropriate education in seventh grade,
Yeah.
and said they needed to fix it. But how did they fix it? They gave him the same teacher he had the year before, with 2 days of training, and she had zero knowledge of dyslexia. Said, here you go, there's the Spire training. That's going to be the best thing ever. We'll put you in with 5 other kids in the same group who had never had any type of education, in an OG program like Spire. Said, okay, here you go. That's what you get.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Here's treatment. And what data did they provide you to say, here's why we know Spire is going to help?
Well, we just hope it does. This is the certified academic language therapist, said on the stand, this is the program that I was looking for. So even though she had training in something that was way more stringent, because this was a school-based intervention, let's go with, something that we can do 2 days of training in.
Gotcha. Something simple, something easy. And understandably so, schools have limited budgets, but also schools are legally required to provide a free and appropriate public education. And you've documented he's not progressing. The skills aren't getting any bigger. Any better. Tell me again, I'm thinking bigger, that I want to make this graph bigger. What age was he at this time that these scores were?
16. Yeah.
So he's 16 years old, and this is how much he's learned in his public school years.
Yeah. And this was several years after what I was talking about, because he was in seventh grade.
Yes.
At that time. And then, and to be fair, I wanted the school to be able to start treating, or not really treating, but, educating people with dyslexia so they could improve. If I wanted to only worry about my son, I would have stopped. I would have gotten him, outside testing, tutoring, that type of thing, and just let it alone. But the issue is that many students are affected by dyslexia. We know 1 in 5. So what are schools doing that they can improve, their education for students, so that way they actually do get better skills, better improvement, and not have to worry about limiting their futures because they can't read and write like my son was.
So tell us what happened next. You've clearly documented it's not working. Schools tried multiple programs, Barton, Wilson, name any of the ones you want. Very few of them have any actually scientific studies that prove they're effective. Usually they're very small studies. There's even a new program now called EBLI, and its name says evidence-based, but there's not a single randomized controlled trial that says that program even works. And in fact, the randomized controlled trial they did do said it wasn't any better in its outcomes than regular instruction. So unfortunately, it puts parents at a huge disadvantage that doesn't exist in healthcare. Nobody questions whether the physician knows which antibiotic has got the best data to back it up, because they're required to know that. Which antibiotic is for strep throat? Well, it's penicillin. Oh, is it the latest antibiotic? Well, no, it's been around for like more than 50 years, but no new randomized controlled trial has shown a better antibiotic for strep throat than penicillin. So then healthcare doesn't stop using penicillin for strep throat, because it's been proven to date for 50 years to still be the best intervention. That's the caliber of science that drives healthcare. But in the school system, it's whatever's popular. It's whatever we call, whatever the next edu celebrity is, who's on the talk show, who's getting traction, and schools are buying their program, then other schools see them buying, then they buy it too. And it puts parents at a huge disadvantage to not know. And actually, even the educators who are really earnestly trying to help this child are also at a huge disadvantage, because if we didn't give physicians antibiotics, they would have kids who die from strep throat. And if we don't give teachers truly tested and proven literacy programs and truly randomized controlled trial tested and proven dyslexia programs, we don't have much hope that teachers are going to be effective either, because you've not given them the tools they need to be successful. So you went outside of the school. How did you do that? And tell the audience where you ended up and why.
So, when I knew that my son wasn't going to get the help that he needed in school, I did go to a local dyslexia center that had, opened up, and they had teachers there that, were teaching Barton, and this was something he had already done. So I was hoping it was just me, that, because I wasn't an educator, that I needed to have, the professionals teaching him. So, and they did do they worked with him. They got him, going from totally being a non-reader to, doing to being able to read, for pleasure, some for graphic novels, which was great. But, when he was struggling in high school and just not able to function at a high school level, that's when I knew that we needed to do something else. So we started to hear, I'd known of Dr. Conway actually for a while, but he was in Florida and I'm in Missouri, and so unfortunately,
Geographics can be an issue, and we can jokingly laugh about this. And you had a friend who told people that I was full of crap, and it's probably not worth listening to, because there's no way what I'm saying is true about Orton-Gillingham, because everyone knows it's the gold standard, unless you go look for the research to back that up, and you find out the research doesn't exist. In fact, now since that time point, there's two meta-analyses that show people Orton-Gillingham based programs, their letters or phonics down to speech, are print to speech programs that have not been proven to be very effective, but they make some progress. And so some parents were, joyful, understandably so, that the kids are making some progress. But tell us about what you chose to do with Nate and why.
So, I started hearing, actually coming out of Arkansas, some people there, and our band of dyslexia moms, as we call ourselves,
Yep.
Were
the dyslexia mafia who's fighting for their kids' lives. Honestly, really, seriously
right.
True. Yes.
And there's a group of about 6 of us or whatever, all got kids with dyslexia, and we started hearing that, hey, the worst of the worst dyslexics were actually being remediated well with the Now program. And so I went to Nate. I was like, I think you need to try this one last thing. Are you willing to try? You're 16 years old. I mean, any young man that's age could have just brushed me off and said, no, I'm not. I've done all of these other things. I have had to spend countless hours after school doing homework, extra tutoring programs. I'm not going to do it. But, he really has that dream also that, he wants to go to college and do something. So, he said, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So that's where we tried again with the school, had him do the testing that you've seen on the screen to find out where his skills were after doing all of these other things. And then also, because of now I'm talking to Dr. Conway, Dr. Kroom Atkins down at the Morris Center in Ocala, what do we need to have for testing so we can see where are these underlying skills that have not been improved, and what do we need to do in order to improve those.
And so how much did you bribe Nathan to do this?
Well, actually, he ended up bribing himself. So, do it after occupational therapy, sessions and things like that. There was a hot box cookie that was down the road, so we would stop at hot box. Ice
Food
cream was
rewards.
always good.
Yeah, teenagers and junk food, that's kind of a good system. But yeah, he's working hard. And give the viewers a little understanding of, like, why are we talking about OT or we're talking about dyslexia? Because OT is not a academic training profession. They don't train reading skills. OTs don't train spelling skills. Why would we be doing some OT work with Nate to help improve his ability to fully benefit from the dyslexia interventions?
So it's really the underlying sensory integration pieces of it. So how is he perceiving sound? How is he perceiving, what he's reading? How is he able to improve both auditory memory and visual memory and things like that? It's just it was really life changing having him go through the sensory integration occupational therapy piece of it. It was 6 months. Basically, he went from, started in January, ended up doing a month down at the Moore Center in Ocala. And once that was completed, everything else just started percolating. The skills just really took off to where they are now.
And how did Nate feel about that progress? Because what we're talking about now is most people don't understand that any learning difficulty is a sensory motor processing difficulty, because reading requires visual skills, it requires auditory skills, it actually requires oral, tactile, kinesthetic skills, and writing requires fine motor skills. These are all sensory motor systems of the brain. Reading's deficits don't start at the letters. That's actually the symptom of the problem. That's a lower level system. So it may make sense to understand that, yeah, you have to build some of the lower level skills and a stronger foundation there first, even when it goes to OT, who are the experts in fine motor skills, visual perceptual, visual memory skills. And part of reading is visual memory, visual perception, which is like reading words that are not phonetic. You can't read yacht by sounding it out. Well, you can, but you won't say it correctly. You can't spell, through by sounding it out. Well, you can, but it won't be correct because it requires some visual memory, visual memorization of parts of the word that are not phonetic. So there's a degree of students who have dyslexia who also have visual perceptual, visual motor, visual memory struggles that aren't the cause of the dyslexia, but they don't help the brain build those other components of reading skills that are not the ones that require you to sound things out. They put more emphasis on the spelling piece. So as Nate progressed through that, we got him into the first program, which is that Now Foundations program, and systematically rebuilt his phonological processing. Start from the lower level skills, going to the higher level skills, trying to build up so that he no longer struggles to perceive sounds and words, hold on to sounds and words, and judge changes in those sounds. Now, granted, coming in, all of his scores, and I think we've got a CTOP slide here too. Let me jump to it. Or maybe not. Nope, sorry, I don't think I have that one. But his CTOP scores, which are a comprehensive test of phonological processing, were all below the 10th percentile. Here's another view of his academic skills. They're all below the 5th percentile in his ability to sound out words, his ability to read words, his ability to read and comprehend. These are all 3, 4, 2nd percentile compared to children or teenagers his age. So this is what we call a severe degree of difficulty, not only in dyslexia, but also in dysgraphia, which is the spelling and writing components of this as well. Where do you feel like he's at today? Because what the viewers don't know is you've done pre-post independent neuropsychological testing, which means you have a private neuropsychologist who had already tested him before. We did those Moore Center high intensity occupational therapy instructional training pieces. We did the Now programs, 1 or 2 hours a day, 5 days a week instructional pieces. And then you had your neuropsychologist retest his skills. Are they still below the 5th percentile?
No, the CTOP score that you were talking about, before went from, what was it, 3rd or 5th percentile up to the average range.
Yep, which I'm looking at one of the scores right now. It's right at 45th to 50th percentile. Some of his CTOP scores are at the 60th percentile. So we've made a massive change from below the 10th percentile to he's average or above now in phonological processing.
Right. And then we also see it in his reading. He's able to read college level material. He's studying to be a pilot now at St. Louis University. He's there with no accommodations.
Okay, say that again, because nobody's going to believe that.
Right.
Everyone tells me, like, I used to post things like, How about no more struggles with dyslexia, no more IEP? And some parents would get angry with me and say, we fought hard to get that IEP. You are not going to take my kid's IEP away from him. I'm like, well, but wait, what if he didn't need it? What if he didn't need accommodations? What if he no longer needed extra time? What if he didn't need a scanning pen to do things for him? What if he actually could read himself at his IQ level, spell at his IQ level, comprehend at his IQ level? Why would you not want to get rid of these supports if he actually doesn't need them? But I understand now, decades later, that for some parents, that was just incomprehensible. It just didn't seem possible. I'm saying it because we have randomized controlled trials research, gold standard research showing that we could take kids from the 5th percentile to the 45th percentile. And that research study, we did it only in 8 weeks, less than 80 hours. We took, on average, kids from the 5th percentile in reading and reading comprehension to the 45th percentile, which means solidly on grade level, and 40% of those kids left special ed. So the scientists, ones like myself who are peer-reviewed scientists, who are expertly trained in neuropsychology, neurorehabilitation, neuroimaging, neurodevelopmental disorders, it's neuro, understand that the brain's not limited in its ability to grow and change unless you don't give it the right practice and the right training that's been proven to be effective. And I'm looking at another piece of your post-neuropsych testing, and I can tell you his listening comprehension was also low, just like his reading comprehension was, and now it's in the 50th percentile on that post-testing from a year or two ago. So he made massive gains in many areas, and those skills entitled or empowered him enough that, like you said, he now is actually in college. And you said, how much support does he need? You know, what is student support services doing for him in college? Because at age 16, he could not read.
Right. I mean, he's not utilizing anything, at school. He's, utilizing things that everybody else would use, Grammarly, things like that. The thing is, before in high school, when those tests were originally done, Google had no idea what he was trying to spell.
Yeah.
You need at least a 5th grade spelling ability for Google to know what you're saying. And even if it's written somewhat phonetically, they have, Google has no idea. So, just the idea that computer-based stuff is going to solve the problems for, everybody that has a learning disability is just wrong. He will tell you that his creativity improved, his ability to communicate improved after getting this intervention. That having accommodations and speech to text and text to speech and that type of thing was not the game changer for him.
Right.
Oh, one thing I want to kind of circle back to that we had talked about. One thing that he knew 1 month into doing Now Foundations, and this is even before doing occupational therapy,
Okay.
is that he's like, I finally know what it means to sound out a word. He'd had all of this intervention, but it was a month or 6 weeks in of doing Now Foundations. He's like, I get it. I finally get it. And it was, being able to see and spell, or to really be able to feel how to spell those words. And he still uses that to today. So if he can't remember how to spell something, he's feeling it in his mouth and then putting things down on either typing it out or writing it or whatever.
And I remember him talking, because we have a video clip I'll show in just a minute of him talking too. And before this clip, he even said, people would say to me, sound it out, but nobody actually taught me how to do that. I didn't know how to sound it out. I could say the sound for each letter, but when I put them together, and this is true of most all people with dyslexia at any age level, they make one of 5 mistakes. They might leave out a sound when they try to sound it out. They might add a sound that doesn't belong there. They might repeat a sound twice. It's only actually in the word once. They might substitute one sound for another, like make an L sound where there's actually an R sound, or they might actually reverse 2 sounds, and they're not actually aware of the changes they've made. So their actual sounding out skill is one of the core deficits of an individual with dyslexia, but it's completely remediable if you're using an evidence-based program like Now Foundations, and that's part of Nate's success story. We know now that his reading skills are in the lower to mid range of average. But one thing I want to point out too, Michelle, is the neuropsychologist on your last evaluation repeated the IQ test. And here's why. IQ testing of a person who does not have learning difficulties is pretty much going to be the same all their life. It's not going to change much. It's a pretty static, pretty stable score when you don't have any learning difficulties. So if you got a 110 IQ when you're 10 years old and it's about the 60th percentile, if we repeat the IQ testing, when you're 20 years old, it's probably going to be about the same, give or take a few points, because it's what we call the error of measure. Tests aren't always exactly perfect, but we know there's a 95% chance the score is always going to fall in this band of 105 to 115, but you got a 110 today. His IQ testing from the neuropsychologist today, one of the subtests, he scored a scale score of 13, which is categorized as high average, which is actually meets the criteria of the 85th percentile of function. And in IQ measurements and in neuropsychology, we know that there's one test that is the best correlate of your IQ, and it's vocabulary. Your knowledge of words is one of the best correlates with your IQ. It correlates at about 0.8. There's like an 80% correlation between your vocabulary knowledge and your true IQ. So that's what he got 85th percentile on the current IQ testing that was just repeated not too long ago. And that tells you can't have an IQ in the 50th percentile if your vocabulary is at the 85th percentile. That is what's more reflective of a learning difficulty interfering with your ability to actually perform on the IQ test. That makes the IQ less accurate because of your learning difficulties interfering with your ability to do parts of the test. But after remediation, when his CTOP scores are up and his phonological processing is much stronger and getting closer to his IQ level, when his reading skills are getting closer to his IQ level, spelling's getting closer to his IQ level. And because he worked on OT at the Morris Center, then we now know that actually his visual perceptual, visual motor, and other skills are also getting closer to his IQ level. Then we have the better chance to actually see all of his academic skills functioning closer to his IQ level. So important for parents to know, do not accept IQ testing of a child who has learning disabilities as the true measure of his IQ or the true measure of his potential. Because now we want to see Nate get his reading skills to about the 80th percentile on par with his IQ. Spelling skills should be capable of getting close to the 80th percentile. Comprehension, math, writing. And again, you said he's at St. Louis University in a highly competitive aviation degree program. That's not a simple field. Isn't there a bunch of math and physics and aviation programs?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't there a bunch of technical jargon, vocabulary that you have to learn in aviation programs?
Absolutely. And you have to be able to speak that stuff when you're up in the airplane and talking to the tower and, all of those things. So, yeah.
So
But
you
he's
need the
having a
verbal
blast.
skills. You need the verbal skills too. It's not good enough just to have the math and the physics knowledge. You've got to be able to verbally communicate it to others.
Right.
So let's take a quick pause and let's let Nate tell us a little bit himself about what he recalls has happened. This is just a short 30-second clip of Nate talking about what was it be like before and what's he able to do now? Because in many cases, these teenagers, it's almost incomprehensible to themselves that this is Nate 2.0 per se. Like he's had a processor upgrade. We're talking the tech world today, but it really isn't. We didn't really do any brain transplant. All we did was do explicit, systematic, and evidence-based from randomized controlled trials program training to get that phonological processor stronger before you actually change your decoding skills of sounding words out, before you change spelling skills, before you change sentence reading skills, before you change paragraph reading skills. There's a whole developmental hierarchy in how this builds. So let's take a look and let's listen to Nate.
I would say I've always been ever since I was young, I never really could read a book. I could read. Next thing I was mostly that's like it was a picture book or something, but it mostly was I'm just looking at the pictures. I'm not even saying reading words. So it has helped me a lot from going from just picture books to actual books with just filled with words.
So, Michelle, what does that mean to you as a parent? Your kid's now saying, I had to look at pictures and now I can just read books full of words, any words, many words as there are. How does that make you feel about where Nate's at today?
Oh, I mean, it's fabulous. I'm so thrilled that, now he was able to choose a career path that he was interested in. He didn't have to think about, limit himself or, dumb down what he would be capable of doing. He's able to pursue his dreams, which is the most important. And for any parent that's out there, it's, don't let society or anybody say that if things aren't working well, that you shouldn't keep looking for solutions, because they're there.
And I think the biggest take home that I bring to complement what you've just said is, but looking for solutions means looking for the research that proves it actually works. We should not have a different standard in education than in healthcare. There's just no excuse for that. There's no explanation for that. It only serves to harm children and parents. When you can't be given confident direction, you can't be given confident and evidence-based guidance about, we know we're going to do this program because it's been tested scientifically, it's been compared to other programs, this one's been proven to be the most effective, because that's what we do in healthcare. That's how we got the better antibiotics. Is we don't use penicillin for ear infections. Well, why not? Well, because research called randomized controlled trials has shown other antibiotics are more effective for ear infections for most kids than penicillin. So that's changed how physicians actually prescribe, and it gives them the confidence and the knowledge of what's going to be most effective. That's the standard we should have in education, but we don't. And so if we hadn't met and you hadn't come across now programs and Nate didn't get to come to the Morris Center, where do you think he'd be today? Because I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be going to St. Louis University in an aviation bachelor's degree program with no accommodations and making passing grades on his own.
Right. Yeah. I think we would have tried community college.
Mhm.
I don't know how that would have gone. I'm afraid he would have been one of the statistics of, I tried it and it's not for me. And unfortunately that's what you hear too much. Well, college isn't for me. Writing isn't for me. Reading isn't for me. Oh, I can read, but I don't like to. So then you're looking at, well, what can I do? And that's kind of where, we were, when he and I were talking when he was in 6th and 7th grade, and he's like, I don't know what the job market is. I can't sit behind a desk
Right.
and do an office job. That's just not going to work for me. But what is available? He didn't think about aviation really until his senior year, about halfway through, and then because these other things he had been, doing that on program and that kind of thing, everything was starting to click for him. He's like, that looks cool. I think I'm going to go do that, but it had
Because he could.
because he could.
Because he had the reading skills, he has the spelling skills, he has the writing skills, which is just phenomenal that he now has the ability to pursue what he wants to do. And like Evelyn says, he could have chosen entrepreneurship, but that's not what he wanted to do. He wanted to do an academic degree in aviation. And good, we want students of any age to have enough strength of skills to be in control of what they choose for their career path. Nothing to me is worse than hearing about people who live for Friday night, hate my job, can't wait for the weekends, so I have to be in this horrible place. And like, that's just so sad that many of our students come out of schools just trying to find something they can do to get by that earns an income, earns a living, but they actually really don't enjoy it. And I know that you enjoyed your profession. You were a pharmacist for decades, and you've made a recent career change. I'm
Yeah.
going to let you tell the viewers about that. Why, after 30 plus years in pharmacy, why would you make a career change?
Well, because I knew this program is just so powerful and so underutilized, unfortunately, that I decided, and I'd been advocating for change, within the education system and for other people with dyslexia. Like I said, we've got a dyslexia mafia, in St. Louis that are out talking about this all the time, that I needed to do something different. So the opportunity came up from Dr. Conway to work for him. And so now I'm Chief Operating Officer of the Now program of the Moore Center. And just wanting to make sure that other people have the opportunity, like my son did, in order to succeed and, do what they want. He's also got a good friend of his that did a video with him, and uh, every time every time his friend comes over to the house, well, how's things going with your work? How's things going with the Now program? So if I've got two teenagers, my son was thrilled when, I made this career change. And, every time his friend comes over, it's how's things going with the Now program, because he's got a good story to tell, about improving skills when he was also a sophomore in high school and did the Now program. And he's very successful to where he's at now. Never thought he'd go to college. Now he's at a college doing precision machining. So, empowering lots of people. That's what my goal is now.
And so what Michelle is saying is she left a very successful career as a pharmacy manager, managing multiple pharmacies across a very successful chain of pharmacies. And there's a parallel here, Michelle, which is many people don't understand that I did not train to be a business owner. I actually loathe the side of business operations and the business management piece. I enjoy seeing students empowered, seeing kids get stronger, seeing adults get stronger, seeing those skills improve over and over again. But when it was clear to me that all the work that we had done back in 1991 as a small clinic called the Moore Center, peer-reviewed studies.
Well, I would.
Let me show. Here's the friend you're just talking about. Here's his video, and this is he's about the same age as Nate.
He's a year younger.
Okay, a year younger. Equally struggle or less struggle or?
A little bit less struggle, but he's still, everything. He had to go out to resource rooms to have, tests read to him or read something or, that type of thing. So, but
Gotcha.
yeah, still struggled in school, but a little bit different story. Mm-hmm.
And he didn't need to come to the Morris Center. He just did the online interventions, which, let me clarify, the Morris Center clinics and the Now programs online ed tech company are actually offering the same program. It's that Now Foundations for Speech, Language, Reading, and Spelling. But one's doing it in an in-person clinical environment with a bunch of highly trained brain scientists called speech therapists, occupational therapists, clinical psychologists, neuropsychologists. And the other, the nowprograms.com, it's only educational services and not the healthcare team. And for some folks, that's enough. That's all they needed. So let's listen to him tell his story for real quick.
Well, I would say, before I started the Now program, I had tried, my mom was great, and we tried so many different, programs and different ways for me to learn. And nothing was really working for me as well as Now did. But, just going through all these different programs throughout my, middle school and the beginning of my high school career, not being able, having to go out of class and go into a separate room while everyone else in my class sat down and read quietly, and I had to go in another room and put headphones on and listen to the book, which was, kind of embarrassing for me. It wasn't, I didn't necessarily like it, but I couldn't, it was hard for me to just sit in a classroom and just look at the book and read, because, the words would get jumbled up and I wouldn't understand it. I have to read it multiple times to understand what was happening, and it was just frustrating. So, and I've tried so many different ways to get through it, and I'm really happy that we're able to find the Now program and that it worked. So, very grateful for that.
So then we have another young man who also has a dyslexia success story. And we hope to have him on a video of his own story at some point in time, and maybe with his mother as well. But these kind of testimonials and these types of life-changing impacts, that's what drove me to leave my clinical role as a research scientist, full professor, just doing research, full day, every day. All I did was research because I love doing research, and go take on the entrepreneurial piece. Because this has to be available to more kids. So we've got wide price points from as low as $30 an hour, up to $85 an hour online. Even in the clinics, we have wide price points and payment plans as low as $40 an hour, up to $150 an hour if you're doing OT and those professional services. But the goal is to make this available to as many individuals as possible. And so Michelle took on the role of chief operations officer, all the business side of things, the stuff that I loathe, and let me stay more focused on the services, the delivery of services, the explanation to people of why this program is going to be more likely to work and why we can say that with extreme confidence because of the caliber of research we've done. But also now we've got a new tool. And before I tell about the tool, Michelle, you're going back to school. You're actually at this age of life going back to school. And tell us a little bit about what you're training and why.
So I am doing the MIT Chief Operating Officer Certificate Program. And it's really cool because I get to interact with people from all over the world who are either in the Chief Operating Officer role or in the, aspiring to be there. So that's been super fun. And because it's at MIT, I also get to learn about augmented reality and virtual reality and Internet of Things and, all of that to really help improve our skills, in delivery of service, utilizing new information. So, yeah.
Fantastic. And we hope you're enjoying it because we need you to have as much skill in that area as possible, because many parents don't understand that the whole Now company is actually staffed by lots of people like Michelle and I, who we've lived this. We are the parents who have kids with learning disabilities, but we did the science to make sure we get the most effective program to parents and families. And then we're now working collaboratively together to make it more readily available. And our newest product, our newest technology to help make more kids have stronger literacy skills is an interactive app called Lip Letter Land. And it's a tongue twister, true, Lip Letter Land. And we call it Lip Letter Land because it begins to build the speech processing skills that precede the reading skills. So some programs mistakenly call themselves speech to print, but any program that goes straight from sounds to letters, doesn't matter if they talk about the letter and then the sound or the sound then the letter, if they're immediately going to sounds and letters, those are not speech to print programs. Those are print phonics letters to speech programs. They've always started with the letters. And what Lip Letterland is actually doing is the opposite of that. It's doing exactly what the Now Foundation's program is doing. It's geared for kids age 3, 4, 5, and 6. It's the whopping high cost of $6.99 a month. Or if you buy the annual subscription, you can get it for $49.99 for a whole year. But you also can put 4 kids on it and 4 separate logins. So it's actually about $10 a kid or $12.50 a kid per year. Or if you're doing the $6.99, it's $1.75 per kid or per student per month. If you're a school and you have an Apple educational partnership, you have access to this app at a 50% discount. Not my altruism. That is all Apple saying you're going to give the schools a discount. We thought we'd priced it low enough already, but Apple's like, no, schools get a 50% discount. So your school can actually buy this program for as low as 50 cents a month per kid, or basically at $6.25 a year per student in the school. And they can download 300, 500, 5,000 copies of it and get that kind of pricing and use this app to begin to build the early phonological pre-reading skills that are the number one predictor of academic success in literacy. It's the number one predictor of your reading and spelling skills is the skill that this Lip Letterland app is going to build. So we're happy to talk and share the success story of Nate. He's off to college. He's going to be, what's the end goal? Is it pilot? Is it FAA traffic controller? Where's this going to go?
Yeah, no, he wants to fly planes. He's also in the Air Force ROTC.
Nice.
So, he's hoping to, maybe get a commission and fly for the Air Force for a while, and then, go on to commercial aviation and who knows. So obviously the sky is not the limit for him. One comment that I just saw in there from Angela, I'd like to address. So, did Nate want to homeschool, before going to college? And for him, one of his lifelines was actually marching band. And so he really wanted to stay in school so that way he could do marching band. He just really enjoyed that, playing the group activities, and things like that. So he still enjoys music. He takes saxophone lessons and plays for the jazz group down at St. Louis U. So for him, he didn't want to be more isolated. He did want that social aspect of going to school and those opportunities like marching band.
Which is what we want to happen, which is we want the student to be able to choose where they want to be trained. If a kid wants to be online schooled or homeschooled or at a traditional school or at a college prep school, we want them to have the skills to be able to make that choice. It should be their choice based on their skills, not just based on, what do they think they can do. Now you've started the music question. So now Amy's got a question about the music question. Do kids who have dyslexia translate to kids who have trouble reading sheet music?
So, yes, before he had occupational therapy, yes, he did have troubles going from left to right and reading sheet music, this way. He had enough of the, visual and then tactile. So he remembered a lot of things by what his fingers needed to do.
Nice.
And then he's again really good, even though auditory memory for language was sometimes impaired, but his auditory memory for music was good. So, between what he was hearing and what he was, doing with his fingers, he was able to be successful that way. Because yes, a lot of people with dyslexia have a hard time.
And then we also know we've got Mr. Robert Bell, who's in the UK in Sunderland at a very pioneering school called Concilium Evolve, where it's there to empower students who've had such difficulty in school that they've actually chosen not to go to school anymore. They just don't feel like they can function well there. It's stressful, it's emotional. And Mr. Bell's built a phenomenal program there in the UK in Sunderland to support them emotionally, mental health wise. And he and I are now getting ready to enter into a partnership to do some trial with putting some of their students online with the Now Foundations program. Let's start maximizing their literacy skills to also see how that helps them have better mental health and better coping skills in school. So, Robert, we're glad you're able to watch today and see this post, but want to end this discussion with this Dyslexia Success Story to say, again, this is where he was. This is where Nate was at age 16. All of these reading skills below the 15th and 10th percentile. IQ, rock solid, average or above. And today, he now is a fully independent college student at St. Louis University, a competitive academic environment, not a junior college, not a community college. He's at a full four-year university that also has graduate programs, and he's excelling in his chosen degree of aviation. That's the true dyslexia success that we want every parent watching today to be asking for, expecting, and knowing is possible for your child, even if they're as severely as impaired as Nate was, because dyslexia science is what we're bringing to you today. And we're going to be bringing you more in 2 weeks with another dyslexia success story. Next week, we'll have a podcast. It's at 5 p.m. Eastern time. That is our dyslexia discussions. And if you've not caught this yet, all of these podcasts are stored in our YouTube channel at Now Programs Online on YouTube. Michelle, thanks again for taking the time to share your story and to tell people that you actually changed your career after a 30-year successful career in pharmacy because you've seen the life-changing impact of your son, and you've joined the team and I of 120 plus people. We're here to help empower as many children, teenagers, college students, and even 80-year-olds as possible, because we have the methodology that's been scientifically tested and proven to be effective. Let you make the last parting comment. What's the message you have for families, teachers, professionals who still think what you're telling is, well, happy it worked for him, but how do I know it's going to work for other kids or my students or my class?
So, at the end of the day, I'd say, there you have nothing to lose. The teenagers that you saw, they wholeheartedly say, just do it. Just do the program. It may be difficult to start, but it is so worth it in the end.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you, Amber, Roberts, Amy, everyone who's joined us today. Please help share this with other folks. We want them to know what's possible, and they literally can't afford not to get our services. We have all kinds of options for pricing, and some of your states actually give you funds. Florida will give you $10,000 to help purchase services from NOW programs. Indiana has $19,999 to some families who need support to purchase more effective services. Don't think that's not available to you. Reach out to our intake team. Go to nowprograms.com, click on that free consultation, and my team is paid to talk to you as long as they need to help figure out how we get effective services to you, your child, your spouse, your brother. Doesn't matter who it is. We've got the skills, the abilities, and the drive to bring you that dyslexia science and dyslexia success. Have a nice afternoon, everyone. Thanks again. Thanks again, Michelle. Take care.